At exactly 9:03 a.m., the county inspector clicked his pen, stepped into my red pole barn, and announced with a satisfied nod, "This is the most compliant structure I've seen all month." Meanwhile, outside my property, Gretchen stood with a bullhorn and a yardstick, her voice shrill with certainty as she declared, "Condemnation imminent." The inspector gave me a thumbs up through the window. Her bullhorn died mid-screech with a pathetic electronic wheeze. The neighborhood birds resumed singing like they'd been waiting for their cue in some cosmic comedy show. My name's Caleb Rourke, and I'm a software developer by trade, quiet hermit by preference. I bought myself a nice slice of land on the edge of Birch Ridge Estates, one of those neighborhoods where lawns are kept symmetrical down to the blade and gossip spreads faster than a California wildfire. I keep to myself mostly, spending weekends restoring vintage tractors and drinking my coffee in peace inside a barn I built to code, fully permitted, and properly set back from all property lines according to county regulations. Enter Gretchen Malloy, HOA President and self-appointed sentinel of sightlines. She believes barns attract what she calls undesirable rural energies, by which she means things I can't catalog on my spreadsheet. The woman runs our HOA like it's a Fortune 500 company, complete with subcommittees, task forces, and quarterly performance reviews for people's hedges. The trouble started small, as it always does with these types. First, she slid violation notes under my door like twisted fortune cookies filled with doom instead of wisdom. Your barn's color creates a mood inconsistent with the community palette. Read one particularly creative citation. The next week, she claimed my roof pitch could weaponize glare and blind passing motorists, despite the fact that my barn sits 300 feet from the road behind a row of mature oak trees. She formed what she called a light pollution subcommittee consisting of 3 retirees and a labradoodle named Chester, then started using a selfie stick to peer over my 6-foot privacy fence, claiming she needed to measure setbacks for community safety. Things escalated when she circulated a neighborhood newsletter featuring a drone photo of my barn labeled in bold red letters as possible outlaw shed. The accompanying article implied my structure harbored everything from illegal goats to moonshine stills, and somehow, she'd convinced herself I was running an underground bowling alley in there. When I calmly produced my stamped building plans at the next HOA meeting, complete with county approval seals and inspector signatures, she sniffed dismissively and announced to the room that those are merely hobby permits, not real documentation. The treasurer looked uncomfortable, the secretary stopped taking notes, but Gretchen plowed ahead with her crusade. Tuesday morning arrived with all the subtlety of a freight train when I found Gretchen had parked a folding table in my actual driveway at 7 a.m. She'd set up what she called a comply fair, complete with color-coded clipboards, free lemon bars that looked suspiciously store-bought, and a petition demanding the immediate debarning of my lot. She stood there in her khaki jumpsuit with Gretchen embroidered on the pocket like she worked at some kind of compliance theme park, waving what she claimed was an official county letter stating they'd issued a red tag effective immediately. Funny thing about that letter, though. There was no red tag on my door, and when I looked closer at her document, it was printed in Comic Sans font and spelled parcel as PARSEL. I pulled out my phone and called the actual county building department right there in front of her and her growing audience of curious neighbors. The receptionist put me through to their senior field inspector, and within an hour, Inspector Lionel Dwarte arrived in his official county vehicle, a sunburned man who smelled faintly of chalk and carried an aura of bureaucratic authority that made Gretchen's jumpsuit look like a Halloween costume. Dwarte walked the perimeter of my barn with a laser measurer, matching every dimension against my permitted plans line by line with methodical precision. He checked the setback pins buried under the corner gravel like he was tracking endangered turtles, documenting each measurement in his official tablet. He examined the trusses with a practiced eye, tested the hurricane ties with a firm tug, and spent a solid 10 minutes admiring my electrical panel with its labels so neat they could have been featured in a trade magazine. While Gretchen recited the entire HOA covenants from memory in an increasingly desperate tone, Dwarte compared them to the actual county code book and deadpanned without looking up from his notes. "HOA rules don't override state building statutes, ma'am." He radioed his office to confirm my permit history, then asked me to unlock the side door for an interior inspection. 5 minutes later, he emerged with a slight smile and announced loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear clearly. "Footings pass inspection. Wiring exceeds code requirements. Fire clearance is absolutely beautiful. This barn is 100% legal and actually represents some of the finest residential construction I've seen this year. The permit is valid, the structure is compliant, and there are 0 violations present." Gretchen's face turned 3 shades of purple as she sputtered with indignation. He changed it after we measured it last month. She waved her arms wildly at the drone photo she'd been clutching. Dwarte took the photo from her shaking hands, examined it closely, then held it up for everyone to see. "Thanks for the documentation showing the barn was built exactly as approved," he said with professional calm. "The dimensions in your photo match the permitted plans perfectly." Then he held up her Comic Sans red tag letter, and his expression grew serious. "This, however, is forgery of a government notice, which is a criminal offense." As if on cue, a deputy from Code Compliance pulled up, having been dispatched for what they called a friendly follow-up on the forgery report. The deputy, a no-nonsense woman named Officer Martinez, explained in clear terms that falsifying county documents is a Class 3 misdemeanor punishable by up to 6 months in jail and fines up to $5,000. She asked Gretchen for the source file of the document and any correspondence about its creation. Gretchen's voice cracked as she blamed an overzealous volunteer while Chester the Labradoodle tried to hide under the folding table. The HOA's emergency group chat apparently lit up like Times Square on New Year's Eve because within 30 minutes, the board treasurer materialized on my driveway, his face white as fresh primer. He carried a thick binder labeled enforcement budget, which, in a delicious twist of irony, contained reimbursement receipts for what Gretchen had categorized as inspection apparel. This included 2 designer sun hats at $80 each and her custom khaki jumpsuit that cost $300 with the embroidery. Officer Martinez documented everything while Inspector Dwarte completed his official report. The treasurer discovered Gretchen had spent over $4,000 of HOA funds on her barn investigation, including drone rental, professional photography, and something listed as surveillance equipment that turned out to be the selfie stick. She'd also hired a consultant who was actually her nephew, a college kid majoring in philosophy with zero construction experience, and paid him $1,500 to write an impact assessment that cited Wikipedia as its primary source. By week's end, the fallout was swift and severe. The HOA board held an emergency meeting where Gretchen was unanimously removed as president and demoted to welcome committee, which, according to the bylaws she loved to quote, is an unpaid volunteer position requiring her to hand-deliver fruit baskets to new residents and smile for promotional photos. The county issued her a formal warning for document forgery, mandated she complete a 40-hour workshop on understanding jurisdiction and appropriate use of authority, and placed her on a watch list that flags any future complaints she files for extra scrutiny. The HOA was forced to refund $800 in fines they'd collected from me over the previous months and pay for the return of the drone to its actual owner, the treasurer's kid who'd been wondering where his Christmas present went. They also had to reimburse me for the lawyer I'd consulted, adding another $2,000 to their tab. The board discovered Gretchen had been running similar campaigns against 3 other homeowners, all with barns or sheds, creating a potential class action liability that their insurance company was now investigating. As for the criminal charges, the prosecutor offered Gretchen a plea deal of $2,000 in fines and 100 hours of community service, specifically assigned to the county building department where she'd spend her Saturdays filing permits for other people's legal construction projects. The judge added a special provision that she must write formal apology letters to all affected homeowners, to be reviewed by the court for sincerity. When the judge read the sentence, mentioning that rejection of the plea deal would mean facing the maximum penalty of 6 months in jail and $5,000 in fines, Gretchen's jaw dropped so far that Chester the Labradoodle actually backed away from her in concern. Her perfectly manicured hands trembled as she gripped the defendant's table, and she whispered in a voice barely audible but captured by the court recorder, "But I was just trying to maintain property values."